So, knowing that the previous episode was very guy focused, I was actually thinking, you know what, maybe we can make this episode a little bit more unisex, a little less guy focused. But no, this episode is very guy focused as well. But still, even though that might seem like the case, at least it is mostly going to talk about dating, and I will try to take a more unisex approach to it. Because, I'm not really trying to talk a bunch of shit to guys this time. And also, on the plus side of that, considering that I'm not talking a bunch of shit to guys, for the most part, I will probably not be as serious or sound as pissed off as I did on the previous episode. Which means that I can start things off with something that most people probably wouldn't have expected, which is the media mogul known as Rupert Murdoch has recently gotten engaged. Now, I know most people don't really know who or what Rupert Murdoch is or why the hell his engagement is a big thing, but let me try and put a little bit of information to this by saying that this guy is the guy behind CNN plus a bunch of other media houses, and he is 92 years old. 92 years old. What kind of retired type riz is this guy spitting to get engaged at 92 years old? Like, did this guy say till death do us part and, suddenly wanted to part her legs first before death? Like, I don't know what kind of lines I'd be spitting at 92 years old, but clearly this guy must have known what to say.
The royal penis is clean, Your Highness.
I actually find it quite hilarious and a little bit peculiar that this guy is getting engaged at 92 years old, because it's not like the guy's been single all of his life and is now getting engaged. I'm sure this is not the first engagement or even the second, probably not even the third. But this guy's still going on, and instead of dude deciding to pull an Oprah Winfrey and just continue dating without having to get married and shit, this guy actually decided to just pop a ring like that. Like, damn. He makes the rest of us youngsters look like we're actually not putting any effort, considering that a vast majority of us who are in our 20s and 30s still aren't popping the ring. But anyways, before I can talk too much about it, let me just read the caption that came with this post. So it said, and I quote, 92-year-old media tycoon Rupert Murdoch is engaged to Elena Zukova, his girlfriend, according to a spokesman. This will be his fifth marriage. The wedding will take place at Murdoch's vineyard and estate, Moraga, in California. The New York Times reported that Zukova, a retired molecular biologist from Moscow, is 67. They started dating in the summer. Murdoch's previous marriage to Jerry Hall ended in divorce in 2022 after 6 years. End quote. So let me get this straight. Normally people will get into a relationship, then get out of one and be like, you know what? I think I'm gonna take some time. Niggas ain't shit, or bitches ain't shit, or, men are trash, or I don't want to deal with women anymore, and they take some time. This guy, after taking some time to try and be single for probably about a year, he decides to go back and start dating, and in less than a year is like, you know what, I think I want to settle down with this one again. Like, this kind of feels like the very old money version of I like a shorty and I think I might be able to do life with her, so instead of me actually trying out dating for a while, let me just do life with her, then I see if it can work out. If it does, then it does. If it doesn't, I can just divorce her. And honestly, I find this incredibly wild. Now, first of all, my initial question was, considering that he's 92 and he's dating someone who's 67, does she still classify to be called a girlfriend? But, I don't want to seem like I have anything against old people. So, for me, my wondering is, out of the 4 other marriages that he's been in, has he not understood the secret to, being in a happy marriage with a woman that he's decided, you know what, I think I'm gonna try again? Because this guy is 92. Like, a vast majority of us guys think we know shit and we're in our 20s and 30s. By vast majority, I'm talking about myself. So, if this guy at 92 still hasn't gotten shit, then why the hell is the hope for me? Like, I suddenly feel like I don't know shit. But anyways, considering that Rupert Murdoch is one of very, very few old men that is doing this, I am going to leave it at that and start the podcast, because I feel like if I continue talking about him, I'll probably feel like I don't know fuck all and I'll end up shutting everything down. So, without further ado, Welcome to the Breakdown Podcast, where I talk about love, sex, and relationships from a guy's perspective, as well as a bunch of other guy shit. The man on the mic is a man who believes that diamonds are forever, but Rupert Murdoch's marriages aren't. He's a man who likes his women the same exact way he likes his yogurt. It is none other than your tall, dark, and mildly handsome man, Sir Denver B. This show has started in a manner that might make me actually want to stop doing this podcast, because how the hell is it that at 92 years old, you're still switching between shorties? Like, I thought that's a thing that us young guys do. Now, you could probably say that he's still young at heart, but still, that's something that us guys that are like a third of his age continue doing. But dude is 92 and he is still rocking it strong with trying to get married to someone that he feels is his soulmate. Like, I'm not gonna lie, I do actually kind of commend the guy, because to a certain degree, I think he and many other old people are the proof that if you stop giving a shit and you just go ahead and do something, the world kind of just follows along, even though they might have had their reservations initially. And to be quite honest, I'm actually kind of happy for the guy, and I hope that the marriage actually lasts as long as he's alive, because, you know, till death do us part. But all that said and done, welcome to the Breaktime Podcast. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you stick around till the end and you listen to even more episodes that I've done before. And considering that this is a Friday episode, meaning that I usually dive into Twitter, this is one of those episodes where you can give your input, because I don't generate the topics. I pick up from the tweets that people usually put up, and I give my thoughts and comments on it. And the drill on how you can share the tweets that you'd like for me to discuss, it's pretty simple, almost sounds like a song, and it goes like this. You see that tweet, you like that tweet, you want us to discuss that tweet, you send that tweet. You send it to the DMs of @BagakaTheD, which happens to be my personal X handle, and I will take it from there and handle it accordingly. If it happens to be a screenshot, a screen grab, or ended up on a reel, then the place to send it to is @TheBreaktime_podcast on IG or @TheBreaktime_podcast on Facebook. The DMs are always open, and I will take it from there and handle it accordingly. Or if you didn't get any of that, there's links to all of those in the description below. Now, with that said, I have a bunch of tweets that I need to discuss, but before I can get into any of those, I first want to discuss a video that I found online, which I found to be particularly interesting, especially considering that it was guys that were talking about it. Now, they were questioning the idea of settling versus making an intelligent decision when you're getting married. And before I can say anything else, let me just let the clip play for a little bit, then I can give my thoughts on it. So, without further ado,
a lot of people get married to people that they do not love, because what ends up happening is that you make a rational decision. It's like a business decision. You look at a person and you say, okay, she's going to be a good mother to my children. She cooks, she cleans, she's not super mixy. Am I madly in love with her? No, I'm not. And the same for women. I think women, they'll marry a man like, okay, he's a good provider, he has a solid job. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, right? How do you feel about that business decision when it comes to a relationship, of making a rational decision as opposed to making a decision based on love and romance?
I mean, I think too many people in many areas of their lives settle for what they don't want because they are not comfortable enough to be fearless to go after what they really want. And just
is it settling? Is it settling, or is it making an intelligent decision?
The men who ended up settling, they end up chasing who they really love or desire out in the streets. When I asked a guy, yo, you married, you happily married? And he like, I mean, yeah, you know, wife amazing. She do homework with the kids, and she supported me when I was a bum ass dude. And now I got some money and I'm still a bum ass dude, but I just act like I'm not one. And I just cover the bills to just keep her there, but don't do nothing extra. And then they're tricking off on a girl who got the OnlyFans or work.
okay, now before I say anything in regards to this, because I have quite a bit I need to offload, let me give a disclaimer first and say that considering that I am not married, everything that I say regarding the internals of marriage is purely speculative at best, and even though armed with some information, does not relate to every single married couple that exists. And that is the disclaimer that can now allow me to speak a little bit more freely. Now, first of all, I never really thought I'd get to a point in time where I'd hear guys talk about settling from a negative connotation kind of the same way women do. Like, normally whenever women talk about the concept of settling with someone, they usually talk about it in a fairly negative light, where it's like they compromised, or they chose because of compromise, or they were chosen because the guy compromised, and it's like they could have gotten better, or there should have been better, or they had a chance at better, but they just chose, the next best thing, or some version of good enough. Now, usually I can take that when it's coming from women, because I can understand how women would view it that way. But from a guy's perspective, coming up with shit like this seems very, very peculiar. Because, okay, here's the thing. When most guys choose to settle down, when most guys choose to settle with the person that they're with, the underlying mindset that usually exists at that point in time is usually that they have found the best person within proximity that they know of, that they could possibly do life with and have it go particularly well. That's usually the underlying mindset and thought process behind settling down, at least as far as I know about it. Now, when you talk about the idea that someone didn't marry the person that they loved, now that's actually reality for most people. Most people don't usually marry for love. And this has been true for decades and centuries and even millennia. Most people, whenever they were getting married, actually way back in the day, were getting married as a unity of two families that saw some version of mutual beneficial agreement that they would get, that would be strengthened if both the two people came together and got married. Which is a big part of the reason why, way back in the day, your wife was chosen for you by your parents. The best situation that you could possibly get that wasn't that was you identifying someone that you wanted to marry, telling your parents, and then they go rizz up the other parents so that they can come to some sort of agreement and make some shit work. The whole concept of marrying for love is something that came up, maybe 70 to max, maybe almost 100 years ago, because people had the freedom to choose for themselves who it is that they wanted to marry, and they were choosing it out of the emotion of love because of a story that came from royalty that, happened not too long around that time period. But for the most part, most people haven't been marrying entirely out of emotion, because marriage in and of itself should not be a purely emotional decision. It needs to be rational, and even though you could throw a little bit of emotion in it, at the end of the day, if it's not a rational decision, then the chances of making mistakes are super high. So at the end of the day, even though you could possibly bag yourself a 10 that can cook, can clean, and is sweet and supportive, not unless if you're bagging one within that time period of when you want to settle down, for the most part, you wouldn't mind going for the 7 or the 6 that can do all of those same things and is particularly close to you. So whatever it is that people are calling settling, for the most part is actually a smart decision based off of the resources that you have at that time and the environment that it gives you, which allows you to make that decision. And with all of that said and done, I am going to leave it at that and move it on to the tweet. So on to our very first tweet of this episode. Now, this one was put up by a woman who said, and I quote, "Why has dating become such a game? You can't show feelings, can't act too excited, can't respond to texts too early, always let them chase you, act like you don't care even if you do, can't double text, you can't just be yourself, it's very stressful." End quote. Okay, so considering that I did the episode recently where I was talking about kienyeji love, why has dating become such a game? I feel like it's because people made it that way, and by people I mean millennials, and for this question I feel like this one needs to be sent to the millennials first, because as millennials we are the ones that brought in dating as a game as opposed to the raw emotion and the end goal of it being particularly pure. Now, the reason why I'm saying this is because I don't think people were busy trying to play games during our parents' time or during the Gen X time. Like, for the most part, people who are interested in other people, they would go, they would express interest. If you're rejected, well and good. If you get it, well and good. Like, I don't think Gen X had that much to do in the name of making dating a game. That's something that happened with millennials. The moment millennials would start losing out and they'd realize, if you did this a little bit differently, then probably she'd be more attracted to you. Or, if you got her this, or if you said this and that, then it would work. And interestingly enough, over time, people just started picking up on stuff like that all the time. And the unfortunate premise was that most people actually started realizing that you would probably derive more value if the person that you're trying to go for is probably a little bit more desiring of you than you are of them. Like the whole, if they love me more, then I can definitely play my cards right, so I just need to get them to a point where they want me way more than I want them. Then I know I've got it for gold. And you can see how people have gamified that, because the moment people tried doing that now, it became this whole psychological game where people were busy trying to create desire with the other person. So you're finding that if a babe is interested in a guy, like they can go, they can talk, but she'll always leave him hanging. Or maybe she decides to ignore him because she believes that the guy is going to chase a lot more because he really likes her. Then at some point, if the guy gets heartbroken, he's told, nah, you didn't play the game correctly. What you're supposed to do is, you don't double text, you make sure you don't use emojis, or if you're using emojis, don't use more than 3. And if you do this, then she'll be more interested in you, and when she's interested in you, you can be seen with other girls, which will make her jealous, which will make her want to be with you a little bit more. And people have played this back and forth game with each other for years and decades, and honestly, it has gotten to the point where even though you're in it and you really want to be with someone, it's like you're trying to minimize whatever desire you have because you want to win at this game. And Gen Z have picked up on it, and now they're literally just looking at it from a winning perspective, not even just trying to bag the person that they want to be with. Like, it's not even about the love, it's not about this emotional connection. People are just playing it to win. So you're finding that, provided that winning is, getting the babe to want to be with you the entire time, or getting maximum attention from the guy, or whatever other version of winning it is there, it's like people aren't even trying to put their emotions into the mix. Everyone is trying to play this mind game, and the entire time people are trying to win the desire game, yet it's not like they're even trying to actually be with a person. They just want to win at the game. Then they can decide if they really want to be with this person or not. And honestly, I think even for me, I got to a point where I just kind of got tired of the games, and I was like, you know what, I'll take a more natural approach, whereby I will go, I will talk to you, I will try to hit on you. If you're interested, great, you'll reciprocate it. If you're not, you probably won't, and that's okay, and I can move on to someone else, because honestly, these games have just become too much for me. I am sick and tired of the games. I decided to leave the games aside for the people that want to play them, even though, granted, it's not like I'm bad at them. It's not like I don't know how to play it. Hell, I'd argue that I might be better than quite a number of people, but to a certain degree, just get to a point and you realize that when you're playing it like a game, you don't get to experience a full level of fulfillment in it because you're just trying to win. And if you take away winning from it and you're in it because you want to get the full emotional fulfillment out of it, then you can actually end up being much happier than the person that's busy trying to win with I don't know how many women that he's trying to bag, or how many guys she's trying to get to do stuff for her. So honestly speaking, I also hate the fact that dating has become such a game. It's unfortunate that a lot of people still want to play it that way, but I feel like the more natural you make it, even though you can take an L or two, even though your heart can be broken, I don't think we're all brittle people, and we have so much more to gain than we have to lose, because we can just bounce back and move on and try and find something better. But then again, that's just me, and I'll just leave it at that and move it on to our very next tweet of this episode. And this is actually a reply to a tweet that I covered in a previous episode, but I felt like I should probably discuss it here as well. Now, the original tweet itself said, and I quote, "You take marriage and money off the table and you quickly realize a lot of men have nothing to offer. No charisma, no conversation skills, no intellect, no emotional availability, no sense of humor, no sense of direction, no leadership, no future aspirations, nothing." End quote. And the person who decided to respond to this quote replied and said, and I quote, "What she is referring to is the real hypergamy, which is the internal value that women actually desire. It's what makes the man, the emotional, intellectual, and spiritual value. The red pill movement lies to men that hypergamy is only about money and status, which is external." End quote. Now, I'm gonna make two statements here that sound very similar yet are very contradicting, but both are actually true at the very same time. At least I believe so. The first one is that the Red Pill movement was wrong for making it seem as though all you needed was money and status to attract multiple women so that you can get the best mate for yourself. The second one is that the Red Pill movement was right to push men to chase after money and status in order to get themselves multiple women to get a potential mate, because chasing for those things is very important in today's day and age. Now, both of those statements sound very similar, but they also contradict themselves, and I will explain exactly why. Now, the Red Pill movement, actually I'll say Red Pill content creators did something wrong by showing guys that all you need to do is get money and uplift your status, and the moment you do that you can attract a bunch of women and you can find a potential mate because women want a guy who has money and status. Now, that was wrong, and it was wrong because it made most men believe that most women are just after money and status because they just want a guy that provides, and it sort of warped the idea and made it seem as though most women are just very shallow and that's all they're interested in, which of course they aren't. If you actually talk to quite a number of women, you find that yes, they might be interested in it, but probably not to the extent that a lot of the Red Pill content creators kind of made it seem to most people that they were talking to. But still, at the end of the day, it is something that is particularly important. Nowadays, the provider guy is more preferred than most of the other versions of guys that are there, but it doesn't mean that that's the only thing that they have to do. Of course, there's other aspects of yourself as a man that are needed, and the Red Pill movement essentially is supposed to be about self-improvement, which, let's be very honest, from a general perspective is actually a good thing. And it's actually a continuation of what I consider the second degree alpha male movement, which happened from around the 2011s till like the 2016 to 2018s, which was very about self-improvement. But during that time, they were trying to improve on social capital by adding aesthetics and going to the gym and working out and dressing well and looking good. Now, with that said, the Red Pill movement is more of the third degree of the alpha male movements, which now added the whole aspect of money and status. Now, they should have improved upon the other things, but now because a lot of the content creators that were talking about the Red Pill movement fixated so much on money and status, it kind of warped a lot of young guys' ideas and kind of made them think that that was all that they needed. Yet in reality, self-improvement goes beyond just the financial and say the status. You also have to include things like the physical, you have to include things like the intellectual, and you include things like the spiritual if you can. Which is why I'd probably say for a lot of the guys that are making a comfortable amount of money such that they have a little bit of disposable income, maybe some in savings and all, then dating is a good idea for them. Even though guys might be like, oh, you need to be a millionaire to date, I think that you don't need to be a millionaire. As long as you are financially comfortable, you can date, and that's a good idea, because at the end of the day, I don't think all of us are going to be millionaires, and if all of us are going to be millionaires, then being a millionaire won't really carry as much value. But then again, that's just a me thing, and I'd be very, very welcome to criticism on that. But for now, I'm gonna leave it and move it on to our very final tweet of this episode, which says, and I quote, "If your wife wakes you up at 1 a.m. weeping uncontrollably and asks you, 'Who is Brenda?' what is the appropriate response? A. Do you ignore her and go back to sleep? B. Say you don't know anyone by that name? C. Say she's just a friend or colleague? Or D. None of the above?" End quote. Okay, so normally some people will decide this, and I feel like whatever answer you have is very subjective on the kind of person that you're with. There's some people where ignoring her and going back to sleep might be the best option. There's others where saying that you don't know anyone by that name is a good option. There's others where saying that she's just a friend or a colleague is actually a good option, and there's other options that you can take to it. Personally, if I was given these 4 options and my babe woke me up in the middle of the night, assuming that I have one, assuming that she's sleeping next to me, if she woke me up weeping uncontrollably asking who the hell Brenda is, I'd probably start by asking if she had a bad dream. If she said yes or a no, or if she's suddenly holding my phone, at that point I'd probably just turn around and be like, we'll discuss this in the morning. Now, I am the kind of person that will do that because I hate it when people fuck with my sleep. Like, I value my sleep so much that even when my own friends are calling me at like 3 a.m. because they're like, oh, we've missed you, or some baby's like, I love you, blah blah, I'd much rather not pick up the phone. Like, I value my sleep a lot. So if it's something that you feel needs to be talked about, it's something that we can do in the morning. Plus, it's not like if I don't answer your question, you're going to die. So for what it's worth, just try sleeping if you can. Personally, I'm going to continue sleeping. And when we wake up in the morning, then you can make as much noise, weep as much as you want, and we can sort that shit out sometime over the course of the day, because it seems like it was something that was pressing you so hard at night. So it's definitely something that needs to be discussed. Although, then again, maybe I'm just saying this shit because I'm a single guy and I have a lot less heart than maybe I did when I was in a relationship. Either way, I might be wrong on this, so I want your thoughts on it. The DMs are open. On X, it is at Bagaka the D. On Facebook, it is at The Breakdown Podcast. And on IG, it is at The Breakdown_podcast. Thank you so much for listening all the way till the end, and I will catch you guys on the next break.
But what I believe is that if you put a pastor and a prostitute in one room, one is likely to convert the other.